Yeah, I believe that people are becoming cognizant of this emergency that's happening throughout the city. I think the general population are kind of realizing that status quo isn't working, so we have to do something about it.
That was Street Sheet editor TJ Johnston. I'm Jeff, and this is Storied San Francisco. Every week on this podcast, you'll hear from journalists, activists, artists, and San Franciscans from all walks of life, telling stories, sharing personal histories, and trying to put into words what makes this city so special. Welcome to episode 45, part 2. This is a special two-part episode that we recorded back in June at the Cultural History Museum's pop-up event, Streets of San Francisco. This podcast is part 2 of the panel we had with Street Sheet editors that day. TJ and Quiver Watts talk about the work they do with Street Sheet and the Coalition on Homelessness. And the three of us reflect on how public and private efforts to solve homelessness in the city are or are not working. Here are TJ and Quiver.
I think just to echo what TJ was saying, one of the things that is really important at Street Sheet is that rather than nominating these politicians and researchers and academics as the experts, we really try to acknowledge that the only experts on homelessness are people who have been homeless or are currently homeless, that homeless people know what they need better than anyone else, and that from the outside it's really it's impossible to try to imagine what somebody might need without just asking them. So at the Coalition on Homelessness, Street Sheet is one part of this bigger organization, but the Coalition on Homelessness is a group that focuses on mobilizing homeless people to change policy and make systemic changes to the way that San Francisco addresses homelessness, and specifically to change that way in terms of bringing homeless people into the conversation and making homeless people the decision makers in these conversations. And that's so far from what we're experiencing. And I mean, homelessness, obviously, we've been around since the 80s, and homelessness has only been getting worse. And in that whole time, the echo that we've kind of put out into the world has been listen to homeless people, let homeless people make decisions about their own lives, give resources to homeless people, and the response from the city has been criminalize, and shut homeless people out of any decision making. So TJ has actually been part of a project that maybe you want to talk about, Stolen Belonging.
That's right. For the past 6 or 7 months, I've been part of this project called Stolen Belonging. It was organized by an artist and housing activist named Leslie Dreyer, and it all pretty much started with the sweeps of homeless people's property.
Would this be after the 2015 or going back further? Around
the time that when San Francisco hosted the Super Bowl.
Super Bowl, right?
Yeah, when there was this mile long stretch underneath the highway of people who are having to live in tents, and the city's response was basically just to send the police and DPW, the Department of Public Works, and just basically conduct these frequent recurring sweeps early in the morning, and that involves it pretty much involves taking away the tents that they use to protect themselves with, sleeping bags, their survival materials. But it's not just which sucks when you have your tent taken away from you.
And this was the middle of the winter, if memory serves.
Exactly.
It was a rainy winter.
It was a rainy winter as well. Yes, yeah. And that's that's pretty cold-hearted if you ask me. But in addition to taking away their survival materials, we've gone out and interviewed people who are living outside, and we've recorded maybe about 40 different video interviews with the folks, and they've been telling us about stories about somebody, say DPW, taking away your grandmother's ashes, or a family Bible that goes back generations that includes like the family tree, like kind of like all pictures of children, mementos, just like these precious keepsakes that kind of like people hold on to because it kind of reminds them that they're still human beings, that they're still people that they were part of something.
Well, and those are things that housed people do as well. So I think by exposing
or
reporting on it,
like and imagine if if somebody broke into your apartment or your house and took away pictures of your family. You would probably feel that that same sense of violation as to as you would if you were living in a tent and a DPW worker kind of basically throws away all your shit on the back of a truck. So
as if taking away your shelter weren't enough.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a more recent version. You touched on this, I think, in what you said last, Quiver, but where is the city in its relationship with our homeless population? Are things improving? What kind of trajectory are we on?
I mean, from my perspective, things are not improving. I think yes and no. We're kind of galvanizing. There are more radical wins than we've seen in a really long time. Prop C passed recently, Our City, Our Home, which puts a ton more funding towards housing and mental health care for homeless people. And so that's a huge win. There's
also pitted one of our richest citizens against the mayor. That was interesting to me.
Yeah, absolutely. We had one of our volunteers get into a late night Twitter battle with the CEO of Salesforce, and suddenly he comes out in favor of Prop C, launching this battle between the mayor of San Francisco and Mark Benioff, and then also all of the corporations that are still continuing to fight against Prop C being implemented.
I know I did 7 double takes when I saw that he was.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Every time I drove past those banners that were sponsored by Salesforce and the Coalition on Homelessness, I was like, where are we? What is happening here?
It speaks to something in him that was receptive, but then it also speaks to efforts on behalf of folks like yourselves to just keep speaking the truth to power, and
definitely,
and it worked.
I think that there is a shared sense that something has to be done, that homelessness is not an acceptable condition for a city that is as wealthy as San Francisco, but there is a really major discrepancy of people's opinions on how to solve the problem. And I think that where the Coalition on Homelessness is coming from is that we need to be redistributing resources directly into the hands of poor and homeless people. And that means money, that means housing, that means healthcare, it means education, it means everything that humans have the right to access. But then simultaneously we have a force within San Francisco that just wants to criminalize and brutalize homeless people, and so that's where we get measures like Proposition Q that Mark Farrell pushed that banned the use of tents in San Francisco. That's where we get London Breed's sweeps that are going on every day throughout the Tenderloin, stealing people's belongings, forcing people into jail, issuing citations that people can never pay, and obviously that just intensifies the issue. It makes it harder to get access to housing. It makes it harder to get off the street, and yeah. So I think we're headed in a positive direction and a negative direction simultaneously, and we really have to recommit to having a more inclusive decision-making process and getting in touch with our generosity and not just clinging to resources and trying to hoard wealth, but realizing that there is enough here to take care of everybody.
Maybe harnessing the St. Francis in us all.
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
Which I could go to that, but okay, we've got audience questions.
So it was interesting to me to see the Coalition on Homelessness united with people across the city for a navigation center in one of the wealthiest areas of the city.
Yeah.
Do you think that speaks to this, this necessity that you were speaking of for people all around the city to come together?
Yep, I believe that people are becoming cognizant of like this emergency that's like happening like throughout the city. I think like the general population are kind of like realizing that status quo isn't working, so we have to do something about it, and like that involves like maybe like a diversity of tactics, which like includes like navigation centers, but also like includes housing and just like housing subsidies and just like a provision of like services that would help people who are unhoused.
So that would be one of the good tracks that we're on. One of the positive tracks.
Absolutely.
You believe we're on. Okay.
Yeah. I guess maybe just switch back into talking about the Street Sheet newspaper.
Yes, please.
Part of what makes the Street Sheet so unique is our vendor base. We have about 300 people who pick up the Street Sheets for free from our office and distribute them throughout the city. And they get the paper for free, and so every dollar that they're given for the paper, they get to keep. And a lot of our vendors are able to survive on that. Some of them have gotten into SROs. And, obviously, we definitely need more jobs and more resources for people on the street. But it is a really good start for a lot of people, I think. We have some issues up at the front table, so if anybody is interested in picking one up, feel free to take one, feel free to donate. If you don't have cash, we just started accepting Venmo, so you can find us on Venmo at Street Sheet. And all the money that goes into the Venmo account, if it's specified for the vendor, goes to that vendor, and if it's not, then goes to the vendor program as a whole. So we'll, order pizza or do things that benefit all of our vendor base. So that's also a unique part of our newspaper distribution model.
And you'll see what Kevin was talking about as he introduced us, that it is one of the best. I mean, if not, it's definitely, I think, the most important.
Yeah.
Paper, and it's not corporate owned. Imagine that.
It's not.
Holy
yeah,
moly.
we don't even really do advertising. Very occasionally, if we're like, we fundamentally agree with the thing that is being advertised, we'll run an advertisement. We did one for City College, but that's maybe the only one I can remember doing.
Well, I think your vendors are the advertisement.
Absolutely.
I know for me it is.
Yeah.
Like you can't not. I guess you could.
I mean the reverse of that. Like nobody advertises in our paper.
Yes, but it
Yeah.
is. But it is good advertising for. I was going to say I wouldn't know how someone could live in San Francisco and not know what Street Sheet is.
Yeah.
I guess it's possible. Everything's possible. And
Totally.
Certainly, levels of oblivion are possible. But
Yeah.
the presence is. You said 300.
300 vendors. We have a circulation of about 15,000 per month. 15,000 every 2 weeks. So 30,000 every month. So a lot of people are at least buying the paper, and we hope are also reading the paper. We do have some really great content. At the front table, we have our Pride issue, which has a lot of stories from queer and trans people, despite a glaring misprint. So, sorry. One of the pages printed twice. And we
not
also
the
have,
editor's fault.
Nope,
Not the editor's fault.
Printer's fault.
Yes.
We also have our sex worker issue. The sex worker issue and the Pride issue have lost us collectively $75,000 in funding this year. So if you're interested in helping us recoup some of that loss, feel free to donate to the Coalition on Homelessness and just write Street Sheet, lost funding, or sex work issue, or whatever. But as far as we know, it's the only newspaper that has published all pieces written by current or former sex workers. So that's a really unique perspective that you just won't get in a mainstream newspaper. We also have our comic issue up there. We do a poetry issue every year. And a lot of our pieces are written by people who are homeless or who have been homeless. And that's how we stay in touch with our city and our constituents. And it's a great way for people who haven't started to build relationships with their houseless neighbors to start learning about the issues and hopefully feel more comfortable building community with houseless people around them.
And if I may add, at the risk of like giving a shameless plug, our upcoming issue, it focuses on the Stolen Belonging project, which was written by yours truly, and that's coming out tomorrow. So, so buy a copy. Buy a copy of the sex work issue, the Pride issue, and the Stolen Belonging issue.
Absolutely.
Yes. Besides buying Street Sheet, what what are some of the best ways that folks can get involved? Besides, anyway, what are things that folks can do who care? Like, they're past the point of they actually give a shit now.
Totally. We're always looking for volunteers. We publish poetry, we publish comics, we publish artwork. We're always looking for artwork, especially to fill space and help make our paper more visually engaging. So if you're an artist and you want to contribute, you can email artwork or drop it off at the office. We also have an art auction every year, so if you want to donate art for the auction, then the proceeds from that goes to our organization, which helps us print the papers. We're looking for graphic designers, writers. If you have any interest in covering issues related to poverty or homelessness, it is fine if you've never experienced homelessness yourself. There is still space for you to contribute to the paper. Send me or TJ an email, and we'll help you get plugged in for sure.
Do you guys want to just say your emails?
Oh, yeah.
Fast.
You can reach me at streetsheetsf@gmail.com.
TJ?
TJ Johnston with a T, 415 @gmail.com.
Yep. And they're also I think maybe not yours, but my email address is printed in the street sheet, so it's always there.
That was Quiver Watts and TJ Johnston. Check back next week, when we'll hear from photographer Chris Macias. Music for the podcast is by Otis McDonald. Film photography is by Michelle Kilfeather. You can find all our episodes up on our website, storiedsf.com. While you're there, please help support what we do by going to our store page and choosing from several different pledge levels. Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please rate and review the show. And if you have any feedback or potential guests for us, our email is storiedsf@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.